We've gathered a team of leaders from Australia's property building and design community at Living Edge in Perth to count down the top 10 architectural statements for the year in Western Australia.
Every year you see Western Australia getting better and better. But what we're seeing this time is such sophistication.
Project number 10, and Aidan Mawini of Living Edge loved the open design of this unique home.
What I liked about this project is the layering from the street front, coming back to that off-the-shelf facade, using just a standard material to create a real level of transparency from the house all the way out to the street.
The client on this project asked a lot of his architect. He wanted a unique design specific to his life on a really modest budget. Is that actually possible? This feels so calm as we walk in here.
Yeah, our client's a fly-in, fly-out worker. It was important for us to give our client a progression of spaces to lead him back into his life.
Phil, it's like we've walked into a hotel lobby here.
Yeah, it was conceived almost as the heart of the house. It has a functional purpose in that it takes you up the stairs and through to the kitchen. It's part of that progression, that journey, which continues through here. Ultimately, it sort of terminates in the garden.
It's that final, oh, I'm home.
Absolutely.
Phil, I love this simple timber detail allows light to penetrate deep into that beautiful stair.
We made an effort to introduce as much natural light up here as possible. Downstairs is very heavy, very sort of grounded. Upstairs is much lighter and sort of connects with the sky.
But what I also love is I can actually look down and be part of what's happening downstairs as well. Why didn't you go to a project home builder?
Because I wouldn't have got what I wanted. It wouldn't have made me happy. It wouldn't have brought me any joy. I wouldn't have been at work thinking about what I'm there for, i.e. coming home to, and I would have got nothing.
The thoughtful design of this home is what gives it a sense of constancy and grounding, in complete contrast to the life on a gas platform.
Tanya Rive of Halliday and Bailey admired the effort taken in this heritage restoration at number 9.
Quite an interesting one for them to try to achieve, to try and get that balance. Lots of use of steel with red brick. It was very WA, but I think they did a good job.
East Fremantle is a very sensitive heritage area, so any project is a challenge. But when you are this visible, the pressure is really on.
The star of the show is the heritage building, and it's so important. It's a Grade A listed heritage building. We didn't want to detract for that. So the concept of the extension was to keep the roofline of this high, keep the central bit, so the extension of the new kitchen, quite low, and then put the bulk of the building to the corner of the site. Crucial to this design was opening up the very tight site. When guests arrive, they have that long line of sight, and it enhances the sense of spaciousness in the house. In small sites like this, you really have to be flexible with your spaces and maximise it where possible. So this dining table is freestanding, so this window seat here doubles as seating for the tables, and around it as well, we've maximised on storage. The whole design intent of this was to provide an office for the owners to work at home some days. It has its own entry off the street, which was really important, and also the bedroom and bathroom upstairs, meaning that this whole side of the house is effectively a self-contained unit. So they might have the option to rent it out in the future, or for a family member that stays, they're totally independent over this side.
The architect here has consciously separated the new from the old. Out of that arises the confidence to address two different streetscapes in two very different ways.
Number 8's unusual home office design impressed Sementel's Kim Rowan.
This project in North Freo I think is a bit of an experimentation in how you can actually do something on a bit of a budget.
North Fremantle is a real mixture. It has old and new, big and small, industrial and residential areas. The challenge for the architect on this project was to expand a family home on a tight budget and a small site.
It came from a conversation with the client, came from understanding and studying the area. The consistent theme we found was this adaptation or this growth over time. And we kind of designed this as a lean-to on a lean-to on a lean-to.
What an amazing office.
We had, as every project does, a realistic budget, and we just wanted to make the most of the space as a priority rather than the materials. We feel the materials did what they need to do. They're easy to source and they're easy to install as well. On this site we have great views to these green spaces. We have great cross ventilation, you know, capitalising on the reliable southwest breezes that we get in WA and especially in North Fremantle, so it cools itself really well.
We really love this area, and so we wanted something that would grow with our growing family, and that would be sort of a more permanent structure. We wanted a more sort of a master plan, you know, something that would have a phase one, which would be the office and the shed. We're hoping we would look at phase two in about 3 to 4 years' time.
Obviously the immediate future is the kids coming here, and as the kids grow up, how they get their separation. You know, this has been plumbed so the kids could potentially live here as they get old enough. It's about looking up until, you know, 40 years from now with what this building can be.
It's a fallacy that architects only work on big projects. The benefit of using an architect on a small project is that you are going to get really practical design that is suitable for your site, your budget, and for your family.
We've gathered at Living Edge in Perth to count down the top 10 architectural statements for the year in Western Australia. Leading the judging are Blake Tasker of Lysa and Ken Slattery of Cement, Concrete and Aggregates Australia.
We've got a good group of people assembled around the table today, ranging from architects to material suppliers to furniture suppliers and designers.
And all of that comes together to bring some really good breadth to the judging table, and that'll give us a really good outcome from today's judging.
Michael Canturi of Vitroxa Australia approved of number 7's ingenious use of some unneeded garden space.
The architect understands that these areas are very sought after, and he's built 2 beautiful apartments, which allows younger people or people that don't have the budget to live in these areas.
In WA, there's a tendency to demolish old houses on big blocks and build even bigger houses. But this architect has found a different solution.
We bought the old property with the expressed interest of creating this lot next door. The old home has a heritage listing, and therefore the council were happy to see that restored, and we were able to create this small, narrow, L-shaped lot. And we've built 2 properties on this piece of land.
This is huge. What is the area of this apartment?
It's nearly 250 square metres in total. A lot of people who visit for the first time often say just how much larger it is when you get inside.
It's interesting, you've got a lot of light, natural light coming in, but you've got some fantastic, beautifully designed screening.
I was very conscious of the outlook to the north because of the building next door. We're not sure when that will be developed. So I wanted a layering of privacy and sun.
And beautiful shadow, beautiful light and shadow.
I like keeping the material and colour palette simple, and that allows the plants and furniture to shine.
This house demonstrates that architecture is not always just about the wow factor. Quietly elegant design can provide clever solutions to our harsh Australian climate and a need for different types of homes.
I really like small, understated, particularly in parkland areas where you really don't want something that shouts and screams to its surroundings. It actually sits in very nicely and disappears within the surrounding space.
Communities can be fiercely loyal to a much-loved cafe. So how do you replace that local icon without losing the people?
Serafima Grove held a public competition that was open to anyone. It was to replace what was a former kiosk, a 1930s classic toilet block. Main design approach to the thing was to actually minimise the building, acknowledge that the park is the best thing about the location, and make the building visually subservient to the rest of the park and hopefully complementary.
100 years ago, the architecture here was quite simple. There were bathing houses, simple farmhouses, and they were that kind of early pioneering kind of wooden structures, so they weren't too fussy. It was a real delight working with Paul from the first sketch. He's a local of this area. I think he told me that as a boy this is where he used to play. He's not that old though.
Those boat sheds are heritage listed,
They
I
are?
understand, and what you've got here is a perfectly framed view of them, which is
That's it.
absolutely
I
outstanding.
refer to it as the picture frame rather than the contents of the picture. You know, I'm not blocking anything with the nature of this building.
We are in one of the most affluent areas in Australia, so it's refreshing to see understated architecture that harks back to more humble times. It's that restraint and respect for the locals that gives this building a timeless quality and a true sense of belonging.
Wow, huge budget, obviously, but incredibly important for WA, and I think they had a lot to sort of live up to with the Subiaco Oval closing, and I think everyone, even if you're not interested in AFL, I think you would want to go there.
The thing about stadiums is they're inward looking. All the fruit, all the good stuff's on the inside. So it's really important, if we care about our cities, that these big buildings have a sculptural quality on the outside that really invites you in. And I think this one does. Matthew, I'm an avid Eagles supporter and I am so excited to be here in their warm-up area.
That's right, Susie, and this space is connected through to other areas, not just in the bowels of the stadium, but it's actually connected to the patron spaces here, where the patrons can actually see the team warm up while they're having their Chardonnay, while they're having some drinks, and when the players are ready, they come down this players' race in amongst all of the fans, and they race out onto the field of play. All of the stadia has been designed around the fan experience.
We wanted people in the venue, not at home watching television. So you've got to make the fan experience in the stadium that much better, so people really want to come here.
So this location, really close to the city, on the Swan River, but without a town centre around it.
That was a real challenge for the design team to actually make the precinct a destination for 365 days of the year. So we've brought the restaurants externally, playgrounds, boardwalks, and this beautiful arbour that we're walking on today, which is, you know, it's inspired by an Indigenous elder's story. There's 4,000 panels over here telling that one story from one Indigenous elder. And we really thought that was a moment to connect river to rail and make it a destination on non-event day.
I was pretty sad to watch my last game of football at Subiaco Oval in 2017. Add to that, my dad was an architect and he had worked on the old stadium. But this stadium is spectacular. It's innovative, it's exciting, and it's a great place to watch football. It's about the fans, first and foremost.
We're counting down the top 10 architectural statements for the year in Western Australia.
I think the standard of architecture in WA is very strong. As ever, it has its own design cues, which comes through in all of the projects that we look at today.
We've seen lots of female architects, I think perhaps for the first time, and lots of houses as well. In fact, 7 out of 10 of the projects were housing projects.
For me, this one has been really well considered, and I think the way that they've actually captured the different eras and really embraced that in trying to tell the story of this particular residence. They've done that with class and sophistication.
This is a really good example of how you can keep adding to a building, but at the same time be sympathetic and respectful towards it. People can look back at this and you can see the story of the building, and that's a really important thing.
The layers of diversity of Australia's population can often be read in its residential architecture, and this house is a prime example.
What once was a Federation house had in fact had 3 layers, we think, of different iterations. So through the reflected ceiling drawings, we started to see Art Deco ceilings and 60s ceilings and pressed tin ceilings. We felt like our job here was to bind all of these layers together.
So this front room is very much the original volume, isn't it?
It's completely intact, and that was part of the idea of the space.
I noticed that your air conditioning has really cleverly been put into the chimney stack so you don't have to touch the ceiling.
Putting in a bathroom space into that room would have compromised the original features of the house. So instead we've popped this out like a little ear that goes all the way to the boundary and tried to make the showering experience a more vertical experience, so it's illuminated from above and is meant to be quite cloud-like and joyful in the morning.
This house has had several lives, and each one has been very individual. The success here is allowing each of these lives to coexist, then using this new life to tie them together.
This is a really special project because it weaves together the local Indigenous culture with the functional requirements of a university student building.
I really like the New Light project. It's very complex in its design. It uses a really exciting cladding system that really adds interest to its overall design.
Architecture on large, complex projects can sometimes be compromised by too many voices during the design phase. But when those voices sing in harmony, the results can be extraordinary. What drives a spectacular building like this?
It was actually to become a hub, bring together a lot of different functions that were spread out. Then the other side as well was actually the Indigenous community. There was a real recognition that a lot of Indigenous students, this was going to be their first, encounter, if you like. There's a fantastic Indigenous liaison officer. And so we spoke with him very early in the piece, and he actually brought together all the elders at a number of different meetings.
We needed to have an open and honest relationship with each other so that we could express and understand with great empathy the pressures that each of us were under.
Out of that came a number of themes that were really important to this project. One of them was Nulak, which is the Aboriginal name for the black cockatoo, the Carnaby black cockatoo. Another one is Jindi, which is actually the honey eater. So those themes were brought in. Well, for the screens, we have the Carnaby cockatoo. So you can see the chest feathers actually imprinted on there.
During a presentation to the elders, our elders group, a couple were overcome with emotion and needed to sit and take it in, as they never expected in their lived life experiences to see such a different shift and embodiment of our Budja, or our country that this building sits on, expressed in the wonderful building that we see today. Certainly positive for community and students, but also positive in an environmental sense, in that the Carnabys, white-tailed black cockatoos here, or our Nulak is our Nyunga name for them, critically endangered species, have been breeding in the precincts around the building post its construction.
This spectacular building demonstrates the possibilities of true collaboration, where the architectural and Aboriginal themes are at the heart of the design, rather than just a cosmetic afterthought.
We're down to number 2 in our Western Australian countdown, and the level of collaboration in this project resulted in an excellent outcome for the client.
They used to holiday in the region, they come from a country background, and they love to live with a sustainable manner. And the end result absolutely represents the client's vision.
There's quite a limited palette of materials, quite a lot of use of concrete, timber, all simply done, but all beautifully detailed.
How many of us wish we could live in a beach house year-round?
Our clients are originally from a farming family, and they always used to holiday in Cottesloe, and they wanted us to pick up on that Cottesloe vibe, and they love the beach. So we've tried to create a house that is really welcoming, which is a very farm, very country kind of sentiment. Then we've also picked up on all the palette from the beach, the greys and the washed driftwoods, and the limestone, which is not only of the beach, but it's of the locality, because this used to be a quarry for Cottesloe.
Pretty unusual to put the pool at the front garden.
I mean, we are fortunate that this street is a very quiet street. We put it out the front because of the northern light, and they wanted to entertain. There's a very strong sea breeze coming from the southwest, and if the pool were out there, it probably wouldn't be that pleasant.
And I understand, Pip, that this deck, this whole deck, is hiding a pretty big secret.
This entire deck, to a depth of about 4 metres, is a concrete tank, and it's filled with water. The client has told me that they've not yet actually used any skiing water.
Look at this view. This is fantastic, Pip.
And it's wonderful having these to-the-ceiling windows, so you can reference that with the wonderful sill. Again, a fairly simple bleach palette, but quite luxurious.
Quite luxurious. This is very luxurious. I mean, if downstairs is the holiday beach shack, this is the hotel suite. This house is intelligently designed. It's beautifully finished, and it captures the essence of exactly what a beach house is all about.
And now, the number 1 architectural statement for the year in Western Australia.
I can see this project going a long way in this series and featuring very strongly in our Best of the Best episode.
This has clearly been designed by an architect who understands materials and understands design.
In 1962, the Commonwealth Games came to Perth, sparking a housing boom here in Floreat. The challenge for the next architect is how to respect that strong architectural 60s flavour while updating for a 21st century family. So Neil, this house is full of concrete. The client came and said, I want a concrete house.
They did. That was their brief to me, in fact. They wanted a grey concrete house, which as an architect was a dream come true.
Wow, Neil, I love this space.
As you can see, the concrete from the outside of the building's been brought through. Really made an attempt to use a very natural palette. And by natural, I mean a matte palette. At the moment, the brass is quite shiny. As you can see here, it's dulled off already. As the family use this, there'll be a little bit of polished brass here. So we're encouraging natural weathering and natural ageing. Essentially, it's a single-storey building, which took up a lot of the site area. So we've doubled the outdoor space by using all of this roof space. There's 50 solar panels, which gives 16.5 kilowatt power to the house, which is ample, more than they need. And you can't see any of these panels, which was important to me. It's not about showing off your sustainability, it's about the house being a home. As we have a Mediterranean climate here, if late afternoon on a hot day, all the windows of the house are open up, a beautiful breeze will go through for excellent cross ventilation.
This house ticks all the boxes. It sits comfortably in its surrounds, it's beautiful, it's sustainable. But most importantly, the family absolutely love it.
Next episode on Australia by Design, the top 10 architectural statements for the year in Victoria and Tasmania.